and welcome to Day Home Divas. I'm Joanne.
I'm Cash.
And I'm Sophia.
This episode, we welcome Krystal Churcher from ACE National back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again, Krystal.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The Alberta government made an announcement recently that due to the federal funding cap on for-profit spaces, eligibility criteria is changing effective May 15th. Affordability funding will only be available for not-for-profit programs. So, Krystal, can you explain what this actually means?
I can try. So this is, it's really not anything new. This is something that we knew was coming. We just hoped that we would get some transparent deadline and maybe some information leading up to it. But just to give you guys a little bit of like backstory on how we ended up here with this. When Alberta signed us into the $10 a day program back in January of 2022, there were no for-profit spaces in that agreement with the federal government. So existing for-profit centers could stay in, but you could not expand your centers and add any spaces. You could not open any new centers or new locations. There were zero new for-profit spaces in our federal provincial agreement originally.
Oh, wow. Wow. I had no idea. A lot of
people are skipping that part and think that this has just been an open market until last week, which is not the case. Our association actually was kind of founded because of that. Most of us were for-profit operators in the very beginning who were at different phases of expansion and were left out or frustrated or lost our value of our businesses because of the way this agreement was structured. And we came together and formed this association. We advocated really strongly federally, but mostly provincially for almost a year and a half to even get these for-profit spaces. So in October of 2023, under Minister Churton, who was, I think, our fourth or fifth minister on this file, they announced a for-profit expansion plan in Alberta. They renegotiated our agreement here with the federal government. And with the province agreeing to put cost control framework, which is our new $15 a day flat fee that you guys just saw come in, that portion of it was agreed to be put on the sector in exchange for 26,200 for-profit spaces in October of 2023. Those spaces were immediately, obviously starting to be allocated. We had people ready to go. For-profit is always fairly fast-moving, innovative part of the sector. But we've asked, I've sat in meetings with different levels of the department almost monthly, if not almost weekly over the last few years and asked, where are we? How far are we into those 26,000 spaces? When is it going to run out? Because, like the childcare licensing portion of your childcare center is your very last phase. So you have built your center, you've done all of your construction, you've done all your improvements, you've hired your staff, you've totally, set it up with equipment and resources before you can even apply for a license. And zero communication. We just received the notice that I think it was less than 24 hours that they were just gone. So it's horrible. It's really, really, really horrible. And it's going to have a massive impact on a lot of people across the province, for sure.
Right. It's so odd that they didn't give any warning, that they just, we're full, it's done. Like, what?
You know what, though? They did this with other programs under the ministry. So we saw the same thing with the space creation program. It was shut down within a half an hour's notice in November when it was supposed to be open until March of 2026. On their website, on the application package, everything said it was open until March 31st, 2026. November 12th of this last year, they shut it down with a half an hour's notice. So I think what happens is that we have a bureaucratic system that has no understanding that there are people's investments and livelihoods and assets that are tied to this. This isn't just, let's go play daycare for the day and we're going to set up these daycares and we all get salaries out of nowhere and pensions and we can work, 9 to 4, Monday to Thursday and have a flex day. These are businesses that people are building that they have made significant investments in. And when you shut down a policy because you've mismanaged a system and you don't know where you're at for your quotas and your caps, there's real people attached to that paperwork, those applications, those files, and you're essentially bankrupting them, like
Yeah.
there's such a gap between, I think, where we are on the sector and on the ground in this program and where people are who are implementing these policies. And we need to come together and start to talk to people who are actually working in the sector so that this stuff doesn't keep happening, right?
Oh, exactly. You can't help but wonder, like, who is in charge of this? How did this get handled so poorly? Like you say, it's like they were just wanting to play daycare for the day.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crushing for people. I mean, you guys are hearing stories, I'm assuming, from people. I've spent hours, like almost all day, every day since this came out. My inbox is full with people, who don't know what to do, who don't understand. I was just having this conversation today with a reporter, and I'm like, there's like two levels of impact here. You have people that are maybe just in the kind of construction phase of things. They're maybe a year out or whatever. And yes, there should absolutely be due diligence done when you're making an investment in any kind of sector to understand all of the policies and things behind it. You wouldn't go build a house without going down to the city and checking your permits and those kind of things, right? But
Sure.
We also have people that have been waiting for one final inspection, which has been delayed because you're dealing with bureaucrats who are now in a different ministry shift too, so things have slowed down, who were not communicated, who have had open lines of communication with the department for months as they're working towards opening, and they were not told anything about this. Like I had a conversation with 3 people yesterday. All of them have multiple centers, veterans in this industry, who are opening by the end of May, who were just told they won't get any spaces. They have, hundreds of families who are coming through that door in a week. What are they going to do?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. As soon as I put post out there looking for people, my inbox has been flooded, and it's heartbreaking hearing their stories. And I try and explain to them, like, I can't actually help you. I want to, but there's nothing I can actually do except get your story out there. I'm like, that's the only thing that we can possibly do. And some of it's just heartbreaking hearing that they've lost life savings. And there was one lady that her family sold off their farm in the country that she's from, and they sold everything. Aunts and uncles and grandparents, like everybody sold off everything so she could start this. And she just has lost everything now. And it's awful.
And there's no accountability for it, right? There's no one, like, you can't phone someone and have a conversation with anybody responsible for this. It's horrible. And if you want to direct them back towards us, we're collecting people, stories at different levels. We have some things in the works that we can probably help in certain ways.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. So, I will.
I'm going to email you some links for some events we have coming up. You guys are more than welcome to attend, but we're trying to just put all these people together because I actually think there's probably hundreds of people that don't even know this has happened yet, because you will only get an email from the ministry notifying you of this if you're in the minister's system. And you would only be in that system if you already hold a license or you've applied for the license at the final phase of opening. So if you are just signing a lease right now and you're new, this is your first time in childcare, you probably have no idea. And it really hasn't been on the media. I did a few interviews and I think they started to air yesterday, but there was no communication around this. So I expect there's going to be a lot of people that are going to find out, in the next few weeks here.
Yeah, one lady that contacted me said they had literally just signed all the papers and she had bought the building the day before the announcement.
Man,
and so it was all just fine. Like, so she's in like the early stages.
Yeah.
It's just
the light at the end of the tunnel, though, is this agreement's 10 months long. We have 10 more months of this Canadian childcare agreement for Alberta. It expires March 31st, 2026. And Alberta has not signed us back in. So for people who are just on the starting point, if they're going to open after 10 months or somewhere around there, there's light for them because there's a really
Right.
good chance that if the Alberta government follows through on what it has made for promises publicly and to the sector, we won't have this anymore. So
Oh, that's good news then.
yeah,
That's
so this
definitely
isn't,
something.
it's not forever. It's, really for those immediate people that we're kind of expecting to open sometime in the next few months. But yeah,
Right.
If the funding is still available for not-for-profit centers, can that funding not be used as a first come, first serve basis?
you would think, right? The problem with this program, and I think that what we're seeing right now is like it just blows the doors off the problem with the $10 a day program from the very beginning. And I said this yesterday in an interview. This program has never been about children and families and creating quality childcare across the country that's actually accessible and inclusive and affordable. It's been about creating an ideological system that meets some narrative that was created by people that don't work in childcare. And that's to create a nonprofit public system, similar to our public
Right.
schools, likely to see it unionized in the future here, and run it like a school. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here where people are losing their livelihoods because they've chosen one business model to open under and not another. It's not about the quality of that operator. It's not about the environment that they're creating. Strictly about a piece of paper that's showing which corporation that they're under. And that's the problem. So that's what, like right now, we do have an excessive amount of funding on the nonprofit side in Alberta. We have a ton of spaces that are left to be created to meet that nonprofit quota, I think 40,000 or something. We need to lobby the federal government to allow for those spaces to be pushed over for that funding possibly to transfer. And we need to ensure that whatever we sign into on April 1st does not include this ridiculous ideological, divide between the sector because we can't keep doing this to people and to parents, right? So
Right.
yeah, I hope that answered your question. But yeah, we can't just flip the switch. It's federal. It has to come from the federal government.
Gotcha. Yeah, that kind of covers what my next question was, which was, do we know why the funding was divided between the nonprofit and private in the first place? So basically, it was just the federal government wanted
Yeah,
to.
like the federal program, I mean, it's
Yeah.
legislated that it will only support a nonprofit public sector in childcare. So Alberta was the only province that was able to renegotiate their agreement after and get any for-profit spaces.
Jeez. I mean, thank goodness that we were able to do that for sure.
Yeah, but we have a significant for-profit sector, right? We had 70% of facility-based spaces were in a for-profit center before this agreement. So it's not practical. Like if you look even where we are today, if you want to actually make childcare accessible, if that is a goal of this program, which it's supposed to be doing, you have a for-profit sector that has stepped up and within, a year and a half hit the quota and created 30,000 childcare spaces. You have a nonprofit sector that still has 40,000 empty spots waiting to be filled and created. So,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't get any more visual than that for me that
Oh,
this is
exactly.
working, right? Like, and you
Yeah.
have parents on wait lists for 3 years in Alberta. Tell me there's got to be a better way than stalling
Yeah.
this, making parents wait and hoping that the nonprofit sector can work fast enough to make those spaces.
Oh, exactly. So the existing program already has signed the 2025-2026 Affordable Grant Agreement, and they are still eligible for this funding, correct? Like even the for-profit sectors, right?
Yeah, because we would have been approved for them like when we opened prior,
Okay.
right? Yeah, it just carries. Yeah, they aren't clawing it back yet from the for-profit spaces. They're just
Okay.
passing over.
I mean, that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think you'd be in trouble because there's nowhere for parents to go, right?
Exactly.
I think that's something that we need to highlight is it's not just about the for-profit spaces not getting this funding or these grants. It's not the centers that get it, it's the parents. So those centers can still open, they can get licensed, they can be fully operational, but you as a parent, if you want to go there, you can't access the affordability grant funding. So you will pay full market value for that space. It's not going to be $15 a day for you because the federal government is telling you that you can't access the funding in that center. Like that's, I think the shift is that there's no funding for the centers. This isn't a grant to help them operate or open. It's the grant that reduces the fees for families in that center.
Right. Which again is another, like we talked about this the last time we had you on, but it's another reason the funding should go directly to the parents, not to the centers or the day homes or whoever agencies, whoever it is. If it went directly to the parents, there wouldn't be this situation right now.
No, people wouldn't be losing their houses because they can't fulfill their leases on a daycare, right? Because it would just be available to everyone. It would be an equitable system. Yeah, I think that's where we need to ask ourselves, like federally here, what's your priority? Like, are you okay with hundreds of people in Alberta about to lose their houses, their savings, their families' farms, whatever is attached, because you won't shift your perception of what families should have access to for childcare?
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes. Obviously it's not about the kids. It's not about, anything other than control or something. If it was truly about the government really caring for the kids and wanting these great spaces for the kids, they would open their eyes and realize that all they have to do is give the funding to the parents. Let the parents choose what is right for their children.
Exactly.
It's not up to the government.
No.
What is this going to mean for the families already registered in centers that are not receiving the funding?
We don't know. There is no more funding for-profit spaces. This isn't an easy provincial fix that the province has nothing they can do with this. Anything to change this agreement will have to be passed through and approved by the federal government. So for families, I think you're in a position where, depending on how long that operator is going to be open under this next 10 months, I guess, and how maybe their financial situation is, what they can structure it. They're totally outside of the affordability grant program. They will charge you whatever they have to in order to pay for the operating costs of that center. There is no parameters. There's no available funding to support a reduced fee for you. So you'll either have to pay that rate of whatever it is, or you'll have to go and try and find another option because they don't receive any money back for your space from the government. I mean, I will say, like, if I'm wanting to find a positive here, that all of the other provinces have had all their provincial programs that were here before this came in tied together. So I think when we spoke last time, one of the things that's always been really something we tried to advocate for is that we didn't want the wage top-ups for our educators to be tied to this. So if a center was outside of this or chose to leave this program, they would lose their, at that time, low-income subsidy, wage top-ups, PD funding, all of the extra things for the staff. Right. Our province has actually brought those back. So if a center is left out, the parents won't be able to get that affordability grant, but your staff will still get all their wage top-ups and their benefits. So, I mean, it's a small win, but it's something,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. At least they might actually be able to staff their centers. Yeah. Like if parents do decide that they're willing to pay that, the regular fee, then at least they might have staff still. So,
and then I'm hoping we'll keep a little bit of the rates down because that portion of the wages is covered, right? You won't have to add that to the already.
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
Will the business owners that have already invested so much into opening a center and now they're not receiving funding have any legal grounds to take action against the government?
No, this is a participatory program. So while there is really no choice in this, there's an illusion of choice. In our contracts, we always have a choice where we can leave, can choose to participate or not participate in this, even though not participating means bankruptcy. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but any of the lawyers that we've worked with from our association, it's very difficult to find any kind of grounds on this. maybe in the future with like something like a class action lawsuit or something when this program is hopefully moved on to something else and there's some actual losses or something like that. But I any of the legal advice we've got, no.
So
Right.
another question, sorry.
That's
So
okay.
subsidy, there is no subsidy at all. So
No.
even if they can't get the grant, they still can't even get subsidy?
Subsidy's gone.
So it's
As of
completely
April 1st, it's gone for everyone. It's dissolved. So just so you understand why that is, this I'm really struggling to find very kind words for government this week. So this program is substantially underfunded. So every year that we continue towards the end of it, the federal government's portion becomes less and the province's portion becomes more. So provinces likely didn't know that when they signed in, didn't maybe read the fine print on where this was going to go at the end of this. But Alberta, for example, we created over 30,000 new spaces last year in Alberta, for-profit, nonprofit, the whole thing. And each of those spaces, if you think about it, because the federal government won't allow for this program to be means tested, they want an equal program. It's a universal program. Everyone gets the same affordability measures regardless of their income. So in Alberta, for example, the affordability grant portion, which is like 85 to 90% of your full childcare fees, is the same for everyone, regardless of income. So you add 30,000 new spaces into the province, and then you fund them fully at 85 to 90% for everybody, regardless of means. It takes a substantial amount of funding and money from taxpayers and the government.
Yeah.
When they did the budget in the spring, what they realized is that the childcare program in Alberta was over budget by $750 million last year
Jesus.
because of this. And the federal government, again, will not allow the program to be means tested. So the province can't go back and say, we're going to income base this. They are not allowed to. So what they did, and I mean, I don't agree with this, but I don't know all of the policy behind it. They cut the subsidy program, which cut $250 million from the cost of this deficit. And when they did that, they brought everyone to a $15 a day flat fee, the $10 a day portion, and then everything else is the affordability grant portion. So Alberta is very much advocating for a voucher system type pay the parent model, directed funding, you know, whether it's like the subsidy program or not, but it would be means tested because that money then can stretch a lot further, right? We could have taken $750 million and had it means tested and really supported the families that need it the most, but also still supported all families. Like, to me, it's really irresponsible use of public funds to be giving everybody the same equal amount of funding, regardless of income.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah. So the federal government said, hey, I've got this great idea and everyone has to do it. So I'm going to fund you. However, I'm only going to fund you for a little bit, and then I'm going to slowly start taking that funding away. So you've got to pay all this shit on your own.
Yep.
Like, what?
And you have a quota. So all the provinces under their agreements, this is a totally a quota-based program. Again, quotas over quality. It's to hit a mark of how many spaces. Everything is spaces, spaces, spaces. So Alberta has a quota of 68,000, I think, spaces before March 31st, 2026, which is in like 10 months. Every province too has the same, whatever quotas their province agreed to. That's the whole push, right? Like, let's just get to those numbers. There's no thought on, well, like in Alberta, we just created 30,000 new spaces and we're funding them because we have to get to $10 or $15 a day. We have to fund them this amount, whatever it is, which is like 85% times 30,000. Like, you start doing the numbers and it's extreme. Like, we have done some great reports on what the true cost of this program is nationally and through Alberta. And we're talking like Alberta would have to take a third of the provincial budget to fund childcare so that every family has equal amounts of funding. Not means
that's ridiculous.
We have to put our schools on hold, our roads on hold, hospitals, just so that every family in Alberta, regardless of income, can get the same reduction in fees to meet the federal requirements of this program.
That is just ridiculous. I mean, not to mention the fact that there's people that have their kids in childcare that are not actually at work. that are just, they're on mat leave.
Requirement, right? It's
right, which is such a waste.
A lot of politics behind this. And I think if you, depending on far down the wormhole you want to go with this, but if you look at like who votes, right? And who votes for certain parties and maybe where they land in like different levels of income. Presenting to Canada at a time when it was this like, ta-da, we're saving the world with this amazing universal childcare program, and everybody's getting it regardless of income, gives you a lot of votes and saves a sinking ship maybe. Because you've offered
this was 100%.
I don't want to get too political.
I will get a little political here because this shit really pissed me off. But even like during the last election, and there was parents saying that they were voting for Liberal purely because they wanted their daycare fees to be paid. And I was like, you do know, if you listen to what Pierre said, he wanted to help with, like, wanted to pay for the childcare. He wanted to support the system. He just wanted the system to be better and to be more appropriate to who needs it. And they were like, oh, really? I didn't know that. Are you fucking kidding me?
We have such a gap in like self-awareness and education. And but I mean, then again, you look at what, if you are reliant on mainstream media to provide you with facts on anything, it's very difficult to get transparent, accurate information.
Oh, exactly.
So I mean, this is a great example. This rolls out last week or whatever, and people are, I know like on our social media groups and stuff, and they're mad at the province and they're wanting to like, let's go and rally and get the minister and the premier and change this. And I'm like, God, you have to just stop, like read and understand these programs, because if you're, the provinces can only do this and the federal government can do this. Like we have to understand levels of government. Like these are so complicated, these files and these programs, that I mean, you could spend 2 hours trying to talk to parents about it and still not get anywhere, right? Like it's
for sure.
It's so hard. And I think that like one of the things, we hosted a pre-election platform webinar for parents across the country, which was very spicy and very stressful. But great. Like I'm all about critical thinking and people having differences of opinion and stuff. And I totally tried my best to be nonpartisan, present exactly the facts around childcare from all the parties. And I think like the biggest thing I can say to people is like, I appreciate that you love paying $15 a day for childcare. Like I don't want to take that away from anyone, but I also want my children to not be paying for this. Like we have to that these kind of social programs cost a mass amount of money, and where does the money come from? Like that's always my question in certain forums like Childcare Now, when they're talking about an amazing wage grid, and I'm like, that sounds beautiful and I would love for my educators to get that. Who's paying for it?
We are.
Our fees are frozen. So as an operator, I can't increase the parent fees to pay for the wages as much as I would want to, and the parents probably don't agree with that or whatever, right? But who is paying for this? Are you increasing the wage top-ups, or are we just printing more money and pass it? Like there's never a plan of who's paying for it. Like Manitoba today just announced a $5 wage increase for their ECEs. Who's paying for that? Like,
right.
It's great. I don't want to take it away from the educators because they deserve it, but who is paying for these programs? Like,
but even as an educator myself, I'm well aware that like me getting a raise means something to somebody else, right? So like how people just think this money, grows on trees, not to make myself sound old, but like, it comes from somewhere, right? Like, and people have to think this through. And the sad reality is, who's going to be paying for this? The kids that are in childcare right now are going to be paying their own childcare fees.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Essentially, like that's just ridiculous. And how can, as a parent, how can you look at your kids and say, you know what, sweetie, you're going to pay your own fees. You don't realize it, but you are going to pay your own fees. I don't want to pay for your childcare, so you can pay for that yourself in 20 years when you're working. And it's the worst it's like the holy nightmare of student loans. Like,
There you go. That's a
you
good
know?
analogy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it just this shit's never gonna end, right? And sweetie, if you can't pay it, your kids can pay for your fees,
Yeah.
their own
It's
fees, and it's just gonna keep snowballing, right? Like this is
it's a mess.
ridiculous. So can the people who have already invested their money into operating a private center switch to being a nonprofit center? And if they do, does that mean that they would get to be able to earn some of their investment back, or the investment's gone, but they could still kind of float?
Have to be very careful. I can't give legal or like
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
financial advice on this,
Totally
but
just on your opinion.
I'm also going to email you some great workshops, like webinars specific to this.
Oh,
They're
perfect.
hosted by an accountant and a lawyer next week for people who are thinking about this. So,
Fantastic. Thank you.
yeah, I think that like what we presented to our members, we had an emergency members meeting. And what we said is like really evaluate where you are. So like I said, I am very optimistic, and I think all of these people here that are impacted and all the parents need to be, whether it's through our association or another association or someone, do something about this now, because and do it, direct it to the right part of government and where we can get change, because we have 10 months to make sure that whatever we're presented with for April is better than this. And if we don't do anything now, we're going to end up in the same place, right? So,
Right.
Evaluate where you are as a business, like your timeline, your construction. Are you going to finish close to March or April when this expires on March 31st? If you can delay so that maybe you are closer to that time, and maybe this will be different, and hopefully it will, then I would suggest that's probably the quickest and best way if you can, depending on where you are. If you want to open or like kind of pivot to a nonprofit model, there's definitely options. Alberta has something that's called a Section 9 nonprofit. It's unique to Alberta. It gives a little bit more flexibility than like a traditional kind of society nonprofit. So again, like we can provide some resources around that and contacts and things. You can go to a lawyer and ask, but there's definitely some things to think about. So if you're a nonprofit, you can't make a profit. Everything all of your extra, all of your revenue has to go back into that center or to that business.
Right.
You can't be taking dividends and stuff, and it's not an asset. So if, for a lot of us, like I'm a private operator, I own my own center, I see it as an asset. I see it as something I hope to sell one day after this.
Right.
And, it's something I'm building, right? When you have a nonprofit, it's not an asset. You can't sell it in that same capacity. You could pass it over to someone, but there's no sale, there's no asset. Can you structure it so you have a nonprofit that holds a license and a for-profit that's involved in more of the holding of the assets and those kind of things? Absolutely. And again, come to some of the webinars or talk to someone who can professionally guide you, but absolutely, there are some things you can do, but I will say it's not quick. If you are planning on opening like in a couple weeks and you think you can just pivot this and be out the door, it's probably not going to happen. Like, you're probably going to be a couple months to figure out the paperwork and have everything set up properly. There's also no guarantee, right? Like you can probably most likely get nonprofit spaces. There's quite a few, so I would think that you're fairly safe with that. But if you're thinking you can open it as a nonprofit today to get access to the funding, come April, if there's a change, you're just going to flip it into a for-profit and go about your way. It's not that easy. And then you would also have to be available, like those spaces would have to be allowable to be flipped into a for-profit down the road, which we don't know what the government's taste for that might be in the future, right? So, if you are flipping to a nonprofit, I would consider setting it up very strategically with an accountant and looking at it as more of a long-term. But there's a lot of like different options. I just spent 2 hours with someone this morning talking to them about like, how do you pivot your business right now in like maybe a niche market so that you can charge maybe not full fees, but full fees for whatever your operating costs are outside of this program and survive for the 10 months.
Right.
And then hopefully you get rolled in. Like there's a lot of different things. No childcare centers are the same. So, I think I don't want to plug ACE too much, but I think there could not be a better time if you are opening a daycare to join ACE and talk to people that are going to help you and actually do something about it. So
Yeah.
there's definitely options, I will say. Nothing is quick though. So
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, we know the government, they do not move fast on anything. So,
no, they do not. Yeah, your biggest one will be if you have a lease as a for-profit, I should say, and a loan as a for-profit.
okay.
Banks are not super like eager to give loans to nonprofits because there's no, like, you don't have a personal guarantee on it. Same with landlords. Like, if you already have negotiated a lease as a for-profit, it's not so easy just to go and ask your landlord to put it into a nonprofit name, right?
Right.
So those are things that probably people may not think about. And yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely been a lot of talk on social media that, oh, just switch it to like a nonprofit. No problem. And it's like, I'm sure it's not that easy.
Not that easy.
But,
I mean, it's not impossible and it's definitely doable.
yeah.
Again, like, should you have to do that so parents can access this?
Oh,
It's not frustrating,
of
right?
course not. How is it fair that the business owner has to lose out so that the parents benefit? Any other business, that would not be the case at all.
It's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Healthcare, the school system, the police forces, the postal service, and are all public services and are all underfunded and poorly run. What are the benefits of adding childcare to that list?
Oh my gosh. Well, what are the benefits of that? It sounds like a dream. Sign me up.
Right?
I don't know if are there any benefits? Like, who's benefiting? I guess it depends on which side of it you're on. As a private stakeholder in this, no, thank you. And as a parent who has had children in different parts of those systems, again, I'm out. No, thanks.
Right?
So
Yeah.
I think this has always been my argument when they are like, let's make this in childcare is a public service. It's a, public service. People have the right. Great. Open up some public childcare centers. You don't need to take ours or buy my center from me and roll it into a system. You don't need to expropriate businesses from small entrepreneurs and women. To get there, but I think that we should fix our public systems first so that they are something that we want to model another system after before we just go ahead and do it. And I feel like if we look at the Quebec model, which this system has been totally based on, and we have to look at that because that's part of this, it's not what it's been made to be, and it's not super successful. And there's a union that has taken over the educators in Quebec under their childcare system that I think is on its 4th strike this year. I'm not sure, maybe even more, right up there with Canada Post.
Yep.
So again, like, parents, if you are worried about your childcare center closing early for a holiday and what you're going to do, think about like a 6-month strike.
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot to think about when we take and put a sector that's mixed market and throw it into a public model. It all depends where you stand. I'm not a one-size-fits-all person for children, so it really doesn't align with my personal values at all.
No.
What would the benefit for the government be to have all childcare as a public service?
Again, like, how far down this wormhole do you want to go?
I just know when I look at this and I see it as this, it feels like the government wants childcare and like that they want to have it for themselves to make it a public service. And when I wrote this question, I was like, finally, someone might be able to tell me because I have no clue. I see no positives for the government to take on, like, they're so far in debt. They cannot run our school systems. Sorry if any government people are listening, but you just can't. Like, our school systems are a mess. Our healthcare, like, when's the last time you've had to go, your doctor says, okay, we're just going to schedule you an MRI. And you're like, oh, great, this will be done within a couple of days. Like, are you kidding me? And so now they're like, right? Now they're like, well, you know what? We don't have enough shitty services that we offer. Let's just take on another one. Like, what?
I mean, if you want to look at the history of this, I'll just give you like a brief overview and try and keep it friendly here. if you look at where like the $10 a day idea came from, like outside of Quebec, probably going to get a lot of angry social media over this.
That's okay. They can blame me.
Okay. You have some people that are very like strongly tied to this. I would call them the architects of this program in Canada. You have like your researchers, Martha Friendly, Gordon Cleveland. You have Morna Ballantyne from Childcare Now. Those names, those people are very heavily tied to the origin of this. I will point out that Morna Ballantyne, I believe, worked 30 years for the CUPE union prior to becoming the executive of Childcare Now. I didn't see any childcare experience on her resume, but union experience.
Shocker.
So I think that it depends on like where you think this is going. And I believe that this is going to be a unionized sector. I believe that's the intent of it, is to unionize all of our educators, to create large, like school modeled childcare centers, like big box style, one size fits all, keeping children in care for longer and extended hours so people can work. Unfortunately, like our economy and life has become extremely unaffordable, and it's going to probably get worse. And people need to hold multiple jobs in each household. You need to have childcare. So, I mean, you can go into like a lot of talk about feminism here and like, I don't know how much you guys want of my own personal opinion. I am someone who believes that
we are open. Share it all.
there's no shame in staying home with your kids. And if that's what works for you and your family, and that's what brings you joy and makes you a good parent and creates beautiful children, then you should have the ability to do that. And I'm not someone who thinks that a program that touts success on the amount of women it gets into the workforce is successful, in my opinion. I think women and people of all genders should have a choice of, you know, being at home with their kids, working from home, or working, you know, whatever they want to do. And I don't think that a big box facility-based childcare that's open from 7 to 7 so you can work 2 jobs is something that we should be modeling our society after. I think we should be looking at making sure that children spend as much time with their parents as possible, and making, you know, the economy successful so that we pay less taxes and we can afford to be home with our kids more. There is no better place and caregiver for a child than their family. So I think we've forgotten that. And I think that maybe very well intended, a lot of these women and people that helped to create this program might have been. I think there has been such a loss of focus and maybe a lot of politics and even like power and maybe some ego in there has diluted us to where this is going. But I don't see taking people's children from them for longer hours and putting them in larger facilities as the way to go. So I don't know, that's kind of off topic, but
no, so I mean, what I took from that is basically the government wants more people in the workforce. And they realize that the only way to do that is have childcare for their kids.
More women. And like one of the markers of success of this program, if you look at like the actual language of it in Bill C-35, is to get more women in the workforce. And they measure that, and then they say it's a success. So Quebec will tell you, like when you look at the childcare system, that it's very successful because they have the highest percentage of women in the workforce in Quebec. Well, again, like, just to play devil's advocate here, why is that a marker of success? Maybe not all women want to be in the workforce in this traditional way that you're pushing. Maybe there's different, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. See, and it's so strange that the government looks at that as a level of success, whereas I would look at childcare, like a successful childcare is where they have quality childcare, where the kids like love being there, having a great time. They're way better adjusted to society. They're entering school systems and they're doing fantastic already. They're emotionally developed, and that the daycares themselves have no non-compliances. That's where your success is. It's not how many people are in the workforce, how many daycare centers do we have, how many women have we got out to work. That doesn't equal quality childcare. What equals quality childcare, daycare centers don't have any non-compliances. These kids are doing great. They are thriving. They are doing amazing. We look at what we do for the kids in this program. Look at what we do for the kids in this program. Look at how we handle kids that are neurodivergent. Look how we help kids that have extra needs or whatever it is. That's how you rate quality childcare. That's when your childcare program is a success, not when you've made so many more women go out to work.
Yeah, but
It
you know
doesn't
what?
equal success.
You've talked about children, like that whole everything you just said was all about putting the child at the center of whatever program it is you're creating. There is no talk about children in any of this. It's about quotas. It's about making a discounted price. It's about creating a certain amount of quota spaces, about getting a certain amount of women into the workforce. Children are not at the heart of this. Quality is not one of the factors of this program. So I have a major issue with this program from the very beginning because this does not serve children at all.
Right.
And nobody talks about the children in any of this. So like I think I said this last time, I have sat through so many government meetings on all levels. Nobody ever talks about children. No one ever asks. And the children are not okay in the system.
They're not. No, we've talked before. There's been a lot of daycares popping up all over, which is great for when the childcare is needed. But I think on some level, we also have to look at where are these childcare centers popping up? You know, the ones that are in strip malls, that their play area is on concrete, right next to all these vehicles being parked. That's not quality childcare. Because the kids, like, that's not where they should be. That outside time should not be in a parking lot. It should be around trees and grass and parks. And that's quality. That's, you know, and I think it's...
You're not looking at it from the space targets, right? Like this is mass factory model childcare that we're pumping out across Canada right now to hit these goals. And I think
it's heartbreaking.
It's gross. And I've said this 1,000 times. This is going to take us decades to clean up. Once we figure it out, it's going to take us decades to clean this up. And it's not anybody's business model that is leading to poor quality. It is a government mismanagement of this system. And I think you saw it with the announcement without any notice. You know, it may be well-intended people who are overseeing this. The government has taken over a childcare sector and it doesn't understand it. And it is looking at it from a numbers and like spreadsheet perspective and not be on the ground by children, right? Like, you know, we don't have enough licensing officers to really manage the amount of spaces that we're creating. There's no infrastructure in place to support all of the new operators who are now coming out and opening up centers. Like, you might be a day home operator, which is great, and you can take care of 6 children and you have a beautiful environment for them. But when you go and you open up a center that has now 100 children and 11 staff, and there's no infrastructure to support you in that transition and guide you into managing that level of center and all of the staff and everything else, you're not set up for success at all. And that is a huge portion of the new people that are coming into this. There's not enough and there's not enough support. And it's going to lead to less quality. And then you cut the funding and you keep cutting the funding and cutting the funding on all different angles. And people are constantly having to make cuts to already very tight budgets. And again, that's the quality part, right? So you can read a ton of different research that will tell you that quality comes from only a nonprofit model, and it's the greedy for-profit operators that are, you know, taking all the quality out. It's not. It's poor management and lack of infrastructure and support to support the sector that is going to strip the quality away.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, we've talked about a few daycare centers that have had some not great situations that have happened. The conclusion we always come to is the people opening them have no idea what it takes to run a childcare center. I mean, I've worked at a childcare center for a couple of years prior to opening my day home. I've ran my day home for almost 25 years now. There is no way that I would think that I have any business opening a daycare center. I don't know how that works. Like, I mean, I've worked there. I know how to look after the 6 kids. Nailed that. But the daycare center, not a chance. No clue.
But like, if you had the right support,
out of my realm.
You could, right? Like if you had
absolutely
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just we're so not set up for this. Like there was nothing planned. They just rolled this out in like mass production mode and they're constantly catching up. And we can see that
Yeah.
with the space creation program, we see it with the spaces. I mean, like I do workshops for people who have non-compliances because they don't know what to do. Like I can't tell you how many times I get people call me and they'll be like, you know what, we had a non-compliance in our center for active supervision or medication or something, and the licensing officer has given us an order to remedy, we need to do training. And I'm like, okay. And then, but we ask them, where do we get the training? And they don't know.
Oh, jeez. So helpful.
So, I mean, you have to have the full system there to support everybody,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's going to be non-compliances. Let's make sure people know how to fix them so that it doesn't impact the children and there doesn't become a further risk, right?
Oh, exactly. Okay, so all these public services also have unions to protect the employees. We kind of touched on that a little bit. Do you think this is something educators will have to look into if the push to make childcare a public service continues?
I'm definitely not against having our educators paid fairly, having great benefits, and taken care of. Do I think that unions are necessarily the best way forward? I worked in public education for a long time. So my personal opinion is I think no. I think that we have associations across the province, ours and others, that provide great benefits packages to centers. We offer them as well to day homes in our association. Wages, again, you can advocate for better wages, but if there's no funding for those wages and strategy on to how we're going to pay the educators better, it doesn't matter if it's coming from a union who's taking a portion of your wage, or if you are actually, we can get a better wage genuinely across the floor.
Right.
Unions cost money too from the employees. So I don't know. I don't, that's not really a question I think I can answer. That's going to be up to our educators. I would just say that think about it long term and look at what they're actually doing for you. And, what are you going to do if there's a strike or when there's a strike and you're not getting paid?
Yeah.
And I think if you did have a union in childcare, then we need our government to have a really strong plan for what will happen when there is a strike, because schools can close and usually those children can go to different childcare programs, right?
Yeah.
During the strike. If childcare closes, I think our workforce would come to a halt. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To strike for childcare, who do you affect? Again, the children. I mean, yeah, it's going to impact the parents and it's going to impact the workforce and stuff, but these poor kids, they need their routine. They need to know that they go here and they go here. You're putting all that extra anxiety on the parents, which is not who you're trying to actually affect initially. You're trying to affect the government. Well, the parents can't help that. Like, it's not up to them. It's not up to the kids. It's not up to the parents. I don't know how else you get the government's attention, but I just feel like striking, you're hurting the kids.
Yeah, and I think that you have to educate the parents to understand, like there's so much education that has to happen right now for parents to understand the complex issues with this program and how it's all structured and everything before you could actually, I think, even have a substantial impact, because you could shut things down and everybody would be upset and ready to like do something. But if you don't have something to funnel them in to do that's going to be successful, you just direct that energy to like a big fight for a day and then there's nothing, right?
Exactly.
So I think, your first phase is we need to do a lot of public education. We need to have conversations like this openly with parents so that they understand.
Yeah.
Realistically, is this just another move for control by the federal government?
Likely. I think my personal opinion, absolutely. I think like we see a lot of government help for problems that have been created for us. I personally am someone who believes that if you can make life affordable for people and not tax them to death, they can afford their own programs. They can afford their own, childcare or their own dental or, whatever it is. And I think that as a society, we're in a very a much stronger place if we can afford to buy our own things and our own services,
right?
be reliant on a government funded system. So,
Yeah. I mean, they kind of created this problem themselves, right? Like 10 years ago,
yeah.
when like the cost of living was not so extreme, nobody complained about childcare fees. Like this was not a thing. I mean, there was probably a few people that, really actually needed the help, but they got it. This wasn't a huge thing. And then all of a sudden the government, for whatever that they did to mess things up, life just became ridiculously expensive. So now they made that happen. So now they're trying to like, look, we're fixing it. If you hadn't have messed it up in the first place, we wouldn't have needed fixing.
And there was lots of other choices, right? Like before this rolled in, I mean, I own a preschool. Parents had choices. They had access to day homes, preschools, nannies, whatever, like, relatives, different things in the community.
Yeah,
This program rolled out overnight and it made full-time facility-based daycare the one and only place that you could access all of the funding. So you
yeah,
took like from 5 or 6 options from parents where it was spread out and it matched their lifestyle and what schedule they needed. And you took all of those people and funneled them to one door, and you didn't have any infrastructure to support that demand. So you immediately created a massive wait list, which has
yeah,
just been like this cycle for the last 3 years, right? Again, if you give the money and the control back to parents, whether it's through a voucher system or affordability where they can do this themselves, then you're going to open up all those doors and that demand is going to go down. So,
yeah, 100%.
So I see the childcare industry being divided much like schools. There's a public school system, then there's the private schools. Is there not room for all different forms of childcare to coexist?
100%. I think that it's actually not the sector that's divided. It is like the ideology and the politics and the media that likes to say the greedy for-profit operators who are doing these horrible things and capitalizing on children, and they're pitting us against each other, when at the end of the day, like before this program, who even knew who was for-profit or nonprofit? Like it wasn't
Oh,
anything.
exactly.
I didn't even know that existed.
Exactly, nobody did, right?
Yeah.
Like we were just all here to take care of kids, and I didn't realize
Exactly.
there was
So again,
for-profit, nonprofit, and
create a crisis and then direct the narrative to whatever you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that is a real thing in the industry.
I don't think that anyone ever has looked at like someone going to a private school and been like, why would you go to a private school? The private school's just there to make money. Like, who would look at it that way? It's just a different school. You get to wear uniforms. Cool.
Yeah.
Like it's
Different
still a
families,
school.
different kids need different
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
I personally don't want a one size fits all for anything like that. I think that
Oh,
there
absolutely.
should be diverse options, and no, not even any public school is the same, right? Like they might be
Oh,
structured the
exactly.
same, but the environment is totally different. And same for child.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, realistically, no child is the same. Like, there's no two kids that are the same. Even when you raise them the same way, same parents, they are completely different. So why would we have a system thinking, again, like the school system, that we put kids in this box and we do the same thing for all of them and it's going to work out perfectly and they're going to be super well adjusted? Like, that's not realistic. That's not how kids work, right? So why would our childcare system be that way?
What happens when you have policy over people, right? Like
Yeah.
people creating policy that don't work in the industry and don't work with children. So
Yeah. I mean, so we just also got that switch with the childcare system it went to the education sector instead of the jobs, economy, and trade. Do we think that's good, bad? I keep hearing both sides. I think it's better. I think because it's kids being with kids, like that part is better. Funding wise, I don't know.
This is I think our 6th ministry, 5th or 6th in 3 years. Like minister, I should say, and our 3rd ministry. personally, I don't think that the ministry itself, like where we're under, is going to have like a massive overnight change in the system.
No.
I think that it's great to have some fresh faces. We're in a critical stage in childcare right now. We have 10 months. We had a minister, Minister Jones, who publicly said they would not sign this extension for this program for another 5 years. And these are the reasons and what we clearly want in Alberta, and set this new ministry up for, at least a very strong, like, public stance. And I think bringing in someone who's maybe fresh on the file, had some energy to give to it. We have a new prime minister. We have a new federal minister. Now is the time to like really shake things up and make sure that we create the next phase in the right direction. So I'm optimistic. I don't know enough about how the ministry is structured as far as like if I think that'll make a difference, but the conversations we've had with the new ministry and the department so far in the last couple of days have been really positive, and
that's good.
I think we can only go up from here, right?
Right.
Like, that's what I keep
When
telling
you're at the
myself.
bottom.
Yeah.
It's like we're the sector that no one wants, right? They're all like, you take them. No, you take them.
This is a dumpster fire. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
Right? Like, on all angles. So
one day this will all get figured out. ACE has Alberta's emergency sector meeting coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and who can join?
Sure.
And
anybody can join. We hosted an emergency meeting specifically just for ACE members to go through this. And we realized that it's not just ACE members, it's the whole sector needs some support here. So we're opening it up to anybody. Anyone can, it's a free link, it's through Eventbrite. I hope to see hundreds of people on there because we want to just make sure people are informed and like, that this agreement ends at this time. What does that look like? What you can do, right? And if you are talking to parents, like, let's give you some information that you can use to educate them so that their frustration is directed in the right place and not back to you, those kind of things. So
yeah,
it's just an information night strategy of what ACE will be doing to advocate long-term, short-term here in Alberta. Yeah. So anybody can come to that for sure. More the merrier.
Okay. And that's, if I remember correctly, it's on the 28th.
It is on the Wednesday at 7 p.m. Wednesday the 20th. Okay. 7 p.m. Yeah.
We will post a link in the show notes, and we will also put it on our Facebook page, our Instagram. Our website is not up yet. My bad. It's coming. TikTok. Yes, we will get it on there as well. Check out acenational.com. .ca. It'll be on there as well. Hopefully this mess will get sorted out at some point, but definitely join the information session. Thank you so much, Krystal. Unless you had anything else you would like to add, anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you for taking your Friday night to talk about childcare with me.
Oh, absolutely. We appreciate you being here so much. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
That's it for Day Home Divas this week. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Day Home Divas, on TikTok at dayhome.divas, and join our Facebook group, Day Home Divas.
If anyone has any topics you want us to cover, or if you have any questions or suggestions, you can email us at dayhomedivas@gmail.com.
We would also appreciate it if you could rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps the podcast move up on their charts and get more exposure. Hope you join us again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.